Okay, once more, with intent. I'm going to read this journal. All right, it is from 4/17, the first of that day. The Mayan day was 3 road. Although I came back and completed it, added a couple more pages on 4/19, which was 5 Jaguar. All right. So this is the 24th. I'm wondering about some things, and I want to get it down on paper so I can get a better feel for it. Sometimes when someone has a high mystical experience, or rarely during an NDE in your death experience, they will experience themselves as the one without a second, only that. Not a lot of us have experienced this yet, so we don't have much in the way of a common language to share it. Besides, even if the common language existed, those who haven't had the experience still could not really get it unless they were psychic or empathic. It's just too distinctly different from the experience of life in 3D. It's not a mind thing. So much for language here. It's twice removed useless for the purpose. Well, be that as it may, I'll forge ahead. This is only for me. Yet, even so, when I share the journals, someone always gets it, often many, bringing a delightful surprise. I don't know what the source is of delight in the shared experience, but it's surely there. In that oneness, which I was tempted to label ultimate oneness, you are the all that is. Be in heart. One can only speak for one's own experience, though, and I just listened to someone's video who seemed to be claiming a certain omniscience, that her experience was the right one, the one that everyone would have eventually. I find life far more mysterious than that, so I'll leave words like ultimate, always, and never out of my work, pretty much. Maybe only Source can rightfully use those. So, in this oneness, there is neither time nor space. All that is still exists, but the experience of it is that it's all here, all now. Be sure to leave mind out of your experience as you take this journal trip with me. Now that's if you want to have the best ride, the deluxe one. The mundane ride that mind will give you leaves too many unanswered questions to be fully enjoyed. It may be that in people's NDE stories, we come the closest to comprehending this oneness if we look at their experience of the life review. During this, they experience every microsecond of their life, every thought. It's not just from their own perspective, though. They fully feel and experience it from the perspective of each one whom they touched or influenced in any way, directly or indirectly. It's a pretty thorough rehashing of the life just lived. In the fullness of the oneness experience, and I capitalize the O in oneness, all people, all beings are experienced this way as if you were them. You see from both your perspective and theirs. The mind hiccups at this, but not in that state, which is not governed by the mind. You simply are that person, that animal, that plant, blade of grass, table, car, whatever it is. Your vision or perspective is not limited by the 3D state, by that XY grid of time-space. So, that being the case, it is not what I wish to convey, just where my meditation begins. I am used to calling that one side of the coin. It's always with us. It's our higher state in some way I don't know how to explain, or even always how to contact. There is no time or situation when this is not true. It's just not our experience when limited by the body-mind here in 3D. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist, just that we don't generally tap into it. Do consider, though, we wouldn't be able to tap into it at all if it didn't exist. Now, with that being one side of the coin, that oneness, what is the other? Well, it's the typical experience of 3D, the more limited one. Now, I was just wondering what comprised the original creation of mankind and of life. Most of us take that to have been a strictly 3D creation. And I'm not using this religiously in creation, you know, Big Bang, whatever. I don't see it as only a 3D creation. Yet, I had only taken it as far as maybe 5D or something. I hadn't seen much more than that. To me, a legitimate interpretation of the Adam and Eve story is that they were originally created higher dimensionally. Thus, they didn't need clothes, not having physical bodies, nor experiencing an environment like that of 3D, with its rain, wind, and weather here. On that level, there was also no experience of the mind, not the mind we use here. The functions of mind were taken care of, but in a higher dimensional way, much like they happen in heart, where there is also no time nor space. 3D is the level of real duality, the yes-no, right-wrong, hot-cold, good-bad, etc. These don't exist, or not at all in that form in 5 or 6D. There are still choices to be made, but they're just different, and I don't feel able to explain. Maybe I don't understand sufficiently, so I'll just leave it there. Being above the level of duality, it wasn't something the first parents ever experienced. They had no sense of it, none at all. Remember, they were higher dimensional. Give it a possible, okay? Just let it be possible. Higher dimensional with no experience of life below their higher dimensional world. Now, I don't know that that's correct. It fits the elements of the creation story pretty well, that's all. It makes the fall into a literal fall in vibration down to 3D and thus becoming physical. Thus, the bodies themselves became their coats of skins. Thus, also, they are introduced to the right, wrong, hot, cold, and all of the rest. It amounts to incarnating both the 3D body as well as the physical mind or brain, with its vastly different operation from the higher mind. Okay, now, I've laid out the initial conditions of my meditation as it began. I had creation occurring only on those few dimensions, up to 5 or maybe 6D. I just hadn't considered before all the rest of the dimensions science postulates today. If they exist, then I suppose they have to be part of the original creation. So I wanted to take a look at that as juxtaposed against the all-oneness of the other side of the coin. Oh my God, this is horrible. All those words just to set up the scenery. Oh well, 3D does have its linear limitations. So, I think I'm like most of us in only considering 3D when thinking of the original creation, Big Bang, or whatever it was. It was a big shift for me to begin to see into the Adam and Eve thing, the very real possibility of higher dimensional existence or creation for mankind. It just made the pieces fit so very nicely. But now, what about all those other dimensions? How do they fit into things? I'm spreading my wings here. How about you? Let's all come up higher in consciousness and reclaim our ability to see into things. We have more powers than those we've been using. Let's get to dusting some of them off. Now, I've got to tell you that the Big Bang is too limited in my view to account for things as they are. All the dimensions and the wide variety of life forms, not just here, but everywhere. Mankind is surely not the only advanced sentient form of life. There are many more. How did they and we come into being? And for those of you that are Christian, you know, Jesus did say he had other flocks of sheep to tend to. If we listen to the ancient voices echoing through history coming to us from the East, there is ample evidence of extraterrestrial life coming to Earth, even living here on an extended basis at times. We also have the work of regression hypnotherapists like Dr. Michael Newton, whose work with people in between their 3D lifetimes reveals what that's like. Robert Monroe's early explorations out of the body before his hemisync days also touch on this subject of what's available in the various dimensions. I'll define dimensions rather simply as frequency ranges, just as we divide the electromagnetic spectrum of frequencies up into sections, with our visible light range being such a small slice of that. I see the dimensions as doing the same thing. It's one way to look at them. They're natural divisions in the whole entire range of frequencies that exist, which I'm sure we're not able to measure but the merest bit of with our science today. Maybe it's a bit like octaves on a piano, the natural groupings that are associated together naturally. Now, of course, the cosmic piano would have quite possibly an infinite number of keys. Why not? We'd need to look for patterns then in identifying the dimensions rather than actual frequencies. I think CERN would do well to do the same rather than endlessly chasing the supposedly smallest particle. I'll lend my voice to that of Nassim Haramein and say, look for the pattern. There's no such thing as the smallest or the largest. Life is infinite and eternal. So, our science defines things currently, and let us not forget how quickly such definitions change, as composed of 11 dimensions. I suggest there is much higher maths not yet discovered by us that will reveal an infinite complexity clothed in the simplicity of many more dimensions, as yet unimagined by any 3D finite mind. Now, be that as it may, let's try to imagine a God. Why would we do that? A real one, not an ET imitator. Let's call it Prime Creator just for fun, but don't make pictures of it, okay? Some things just shouldn't be made into things. Okay, now let's imagine the creation of mankind. If you find this interesting, I suggest you go online to read Dr. Michael Newton's second book. There's an audio book. It takes about 12 hours. It goes very close to what may be the place where new souls are created. A sort of soul nursery or a being nursery for brand new beings. Destiny of Souls, it's called. Now, be in heart, please. Let's be more eclectic in our look at creation and view it with a truly flexible perspective. What if there were many more sorts of beings that were created at that original time? Can we make room for that? I suggest that with what's upcoming for mankind, as we rise in awareness in this great shift I see happening, that we've got quite a few surprises ahead. So let's do what we can to begin to make the adjustments. Let's see not only many different creatures and many with higher intelligence and capacity, but also many beings that don't exist on 3D. As I said earlier, I don't believe mankind's creation, his original creation, was a physical one. I think we were beings created in spirit, and that we lived that way for who knows how long. When there's no time, there's no telling. Now, there's something else to consider here, and that's that people can inhabit various sorts of bodies. I don't believe we were created originally with bodies, as I've said. I see us as energy beings, beings of light, if you will. I can see the creation story of Adam and Eve as these energy beings. Remember, they communed freely with God in the garden. I also don't accept the right and wrong angle that's been put on that story. And I know that'll be a lot for some people to even consider, much less accept. I see us as divine beings right from the start. Rather than wrongdoing here, I see the desire to explore another experience, perhaps another dimension. It may be that for this exploration, the coats of skins or bodies were required. Human bodies for the 3D experience. Physical, mental, emotional, etheric, skins, bodies, multiples. Hey, it could be. I'm not saying to believe. I'm just saying to consider, explore, have fun. Let's practice a very flexible perspective. So, how would multidimensional mankind be created? Could the original creation have been in spirit, only in what we call the higher dimensions?
Then maybe the Big Bang aspect of it was the later of 3D, of the lower dimension, as a further ground for the beings, the souls of sentient, intelligent life. Okay, now, anything possible. How do you think it may have happened? I guess for the moment I'll leave it there with imagining. I'll have to do some being on this one to see if and how it's fleshed out. I'm also looking forward to the continuation of an earlier journal, the one that spoke of a new way of being called radiance and resonance. I do too much to utilize those words, but I find it intriguing. Just to know that the brain of Sita or Teresa Ann is involved in these things. They come definitely from elsewhere, wherever that is. And please know that you too commute that elsewhere. It's higher dimensional, and it's not channeling some other being, but that's all I can put into it. Anyone who goes makes contact with that. It's a massive connection. All that is, both in and across, all time, all space, all the whole lot. The contact point with all of that is with each of us. Inner kingdom, the kingdom of heart. Do have a look. Go inside and maybe even take your own special trip. It's truly just stay in heart. It's divine, and you never know when a galaxy sun might. P.S. Don't forget to include both the mythical gods and nature spirits in your template of Big Bang. We're really alone here. We never were. Let's keep throwing off more and more of the lies, the programming that just doesn't work anymore. Thanks be to Source. Good day. Okay, once more, with intent, I'm going to read this journal. All right, it is from 4/17, the first of that day. The Mayan day was 3 road. Although I came back and completed it, added a couple more pages on 4/19, which was 5 Jaguar. All right. So this is the 24th. I'm wondering about some things, and I want to get it. The only Source can rightfully use those. So in this oneness, there is neither time nor space. All that is still exists, but the experience of it is that it's all here, all now. Be sure to leave mind out of your experience as you take this journal trip with me. Now that's if you want to have the best ride, the deluxe one. The mundane ride that mind will give you leaves too many which I was tempted to label ultimate oneness. You are the all that is. Be in heart. One can only speak for one's own experience, though, and I just listened to someone's video who seemed to be claiming a certain omniscience, that her experience was the right one, the one that everyone would have eventually. I find life far more mysterious than that, so I'll leave words like ultimate, always, and never out of my work, pretty much. Maybe. It's just too distinctly different from the experience of life in 3D. It's not a mind thing. So much for language here. It's twice removed useless for the purpose. Well, be that as it may, I'll forge ahead. This is only for me. Yet, even so, when I share the journals, someone always gets it, often many, bringing a delightful surprise. I don't know what the source is of delight in the shared experience, but it's surely there. In that oneness, down on paper so I can get a better feel for it. Sometimes when someone has a high mystical experience, or rarely during an NDE in your death experience, they will experience themselves as the one without a second, only that. Not a lot of us have experienced this yet, so we don't have much in the way of a common language to share it. Besides, even if the common language existed, those who haven't had the experience still could not really get it unless they were psychic or empathic.